masculinity, as much as it's postured as being courageous and strong and solid, it's extremely fragile, and it's constantly fragile because we are this close to being replaced by Google and a good vibrator. I think Evam Stand-Up Tamasha, the most important thing is we have always been the breeding ground for day after tomorrow's superstar. And therefore, seeing yourself as a partner to the talent is more critical. We will keep it going no matter what happens. In the last 2 years, I've made no money out of stand-up comedy, and I've realized that I'm more of a stand-up comic than I've ever been. Because even if I make no money on stand-up comedy, I think like a comic every day. I'm making meaning of my life through my comedy. I just have to make sure that audiences relate to that as well.
Hello and welcome to the DeadAnt ChatRoom. This is your host Dhanush Kapil, and joining us today is actor and comedian Karthik Kumar. It's been a rough year for everyone, I think, and you guys had to shut down the talent management part or vertical of Evam. Yeah. So was that because of the sort of pandemic and lockdowns?
I think definitely. I mean, when you manage talent, you have that sense of responsibility, saying I need to do the best for them in these times, right? And I don't think Evam could confidently say these 2 years we will be able to do the best for the talent, because the entire live component was pulled out of the equation. And whenever it was pulled back in, it was sporadic in the last 2 years. And live is where Evam sees itself being the greatest differentiator as possible. And in that period, if we are not able to supplement the live with brand connections, which we at that point of time felt that we were not the best at doing, right? I think it was only right that we let the artists free agent themselves and work with them in projects that are meaningful to them in providing them a meaningful living. So that's exactly what we have focused ourselves, without taking the sense of emotional burden of saying we are responsible for their livelihoods, because literally everybody was is still scrambling to make a living ourselves. So Evam is struggling to find its footing right now, as much as each and every artist is. At this point of time, to have that emotional burden of saying we are responsible for their livelihood is a tough one to handle.
And so what is your model now for Evam? What's the vision for the company?
I think Evam Stand-Up Tamasha, the most important thing is we've always been the breeding ground for day after tomorrow's superstar. All right? I think being a part of that, being that catalyst in the ecosystem is something that we've enjoyed, because we're able to give that boost to an artist who has that first 5 minutes, has gotten discovered and is now struggling saying, where is my 60 minutes? Right? And that is a 3-year process of finding themselves. And we have been very, very successful and proven with our track record of being able to be ahead of that curve and take them through that curve. Right? I think once they become superstars, literally anybody can manage them, because they just need a support system. Whereas before they become superstars, to provide that vital ground where you give them reflection on content, give them stage time, give them an audience digitally that they can be reached to, and then figure their first special. I think that is that space that is extremely vital for a comic. Every comic would recount that phase as being the most influential in their forming of their persona. And therefore, I think in the last 2 years, the greatest lacuna in the ecosystem has been we've not had the next 30 comics come out, because everybody's like, dude, is this even a viable livelihood that we can pursue, right? So when the art form itself has a liability, has a questionability in the livelihood making of it, right? You're not going to have the new stream of people coming in. And I think our focus in the next 2 years will be to add another 25 to 30 active performers into the ecosystem and provide them a way to get them into the next stage. I think that's something that Evam Stand-Up Tamasha will be busy occupying itself.
Yeah. And have things changed on the artist front also? Because traditionally the idea is you get there, you get a few shows, you get a small audience, and then you get signed on to a talent management agency, because that's the next step. Do you think that sort of is changing? Is it more viable for artists to sort of do it themselves for a bit longer and figure it out themselves?
I think the entire management of talent is now a misnomer. You don't really need to manage talent. You need to provide talent projects that they can work on, right? So therefore, you're no longer a manager of talent, you are a partner to that talent, right? And therefore, seeing yourself as a partner to the talent is more critical, because if you manage the talent, technically speaking, the talent is always going to look at you and saying, what do I need you for? What are you taking 15% for? And that's a question that sometimes talent managers cannot answer meaningfully, because of the fact that when the artist gets bigger and bigger, you start becoming an assistant to the artist. And that's not something that I would definitely, I would find that a difficult value system to live up to, right? Because you don't want to be an assistant to an artist, you want to be a partner to the artist. So as long as you can remain a partner to the artist, that's a very, very valuable part of the ecosystem. To be, like, as you rightly said, an artist can easily hire a manager and pay them a fixed salary per month, because they're only doing odd jobs, or they're just doing basic support, just reverts to inquiries and stuff like that. That is something that an artist can easily find right now without them having any experience or any value in the ecosystem.
That's interesting, because that's a conversation because I come from the music scene. That's what I used to cover when I started out, and that realization happened there a few years ago. That not everyone needs a talent manager or an artist manager, and that 15% is only useful when you're big enough that it requires you. You can't handle it yourself. You also kind of, just before the lockdown hit, a little while before, you guys started a comedy club in Chennai. And Chennai became like the second city in the country to have 4 dedicated comedy venues. And then lockdown hit. So what's the plan with the club now? How have you guys sort of handled all these disruptions?
Well, the good news is that, good news for us, not for stand-up comedy in general. The good news that we have been able to maintain is that I think 2 years after lockdown, right now, we are the only comedy club that remains, but we remain steadfast and strong. We have literally worked on months of programming. Whenever there was 50% or 100% occupancy, we have worked on months of programming where we have actually made no money whatsoever. But we have had a dedicated team to be able to run it weekend upon weekend. We used to have 3 days of programming per week that reduced to 2 days and sometimes 1 day of programming per week. But to be able to maintain that club is extremely important to AVOM and the ecosystem here, because you have to send out that signal saying that the green light is bleeping. Right? We are catching signal, we are a part of the vibe still exists, and making even a room of 200 people laugh per week in the city is critical, because it's proof of life. Right? Proof of sustenance. So I think to keep that comedy club running is kind of like an artistic responsibility for AVOM, because we've been in the live and comedy space for the last 11, 12 years, right now, and live for the last 18 years. And it was a dream come true for us to realize that venue. We will keep it going no matter what happens in 2022 for sure.
And so a lot of the conversation of the last couple of years has been about how comics are adapting to all of this. They're doing Zoom shows, they're figuring out YouTube streams, but talent has those options. How is the sort of infrastructure behind them, which you're a part of, like agencies, promoters, clubs, how are they coping, but also are there sort of innovations or ways of doing that have emerged from, ways of working that have emerged from this that we're going to see become more adopted as we go on?
I'm going to sound boomer-like when I say this right now. I see a lot of the comics who have been in the fray for the last 7 to 10 years, right? I would say the first generation of comics that came from across cities, right from Delhi, Bombay, Calcutta, who later moved to Bombay, and Bangalore, who later moved to Bombay, and Chennai. All these comics, we are all aware of the fact that there are certain things that we need to continue doing in the ecosystem, which is very important for the ecosystem, right? For instance, to perform at a comedy club sometimes makes absolutely lesser sense than performing in another venue that you might like to book, But for us to say that we need to keep visiting comedy clubs, because keeping comedy clubs is important for this fraternity to thrive, right? So comedy clubs is one such example. Putting a special out there periodically is one such hygiene thing that we feel that we should continue to keep doing. And tour that special as much as possible. You know, that notion that we need to really tour a special. We need to perform the show as many times as possible before we can even consider or explore a digital release. Right? All these things are something that right from a V who's in the top of the ecosystem to down to a comic who's completed about 7 to 6 years in the ecosystem is important to do. Right? I wouldn't say that that responsibility has been completely adopted by the newest generation of comics who still are struggling because of the fact that they just have to find, I'll do anything. I'll continue doing online shows, or I will take any show that comes my way right now, or damn the open mics, I don't want open mics. I'm just going to keep releasing content online. Right? So somewhere I think they have been a lot more nimble-footed in terms of adapting to new things. Yeah. And the older comics are feeling like, no, we need to like hold on to our seats right now because this system could get ripped off in the next 2 years, and we don't want that to happen. When COVID comes to a certain sense of normalcy and control, you definitely want at least one comedy club in every city. You want to have at least 2 to 3 local producers who can host a tour of a touring artist. And every city should have its own strong local scene. All these are variables that will keep the comedy fraternity going and not depend on a savior like an OTT platform coming and picking up a special. Yeah. Right? So we can't see the OTT platforms as saviors. We need to have a viable system of just content putting out and live performances happening non-stop in order for eventually an OTT platform to cherry pick a special out.
Yeah. And some of these are lessons like in the music industry, like in the independent music space, we learned a while ago. Because I remember 2006 to 2011-12, in Bombay, there was a venue shutting down every 2-3 months. And, you know, everyone was just like, gigs would happen at one gig for 2 months and they'd be like, you guys are too loud or too this thing. So the importance of having these spaces that are permanent, because it's not just about a place for you to perform, those become hubs of community.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right? That's where comedians come, interact with fans, interact with each other, and realize that this is a broader collective community rather than you doing it yourself. Is that something also that you hope to build with your club and with what AVM is doing?
Yeah, definitely. I think to keep the flag flying high, even during these tough times, is probably the only sense of purpose that we have in this space right now. Because I'm as AVM, we are fully invested into this bizarre world of stand-up comedy. Whether it is owning a club, or whether it is being in touch with the artists here locally, or whether it is me being an artist myself saying, dude, I make most of my living in stand-up comedy, right? In the last 2 years, I've made no money out of stand-up comedy, and I've realized that I'm more of a stand-up comic than I've ever been. Because even if I make no money on stand-up comedy, I think like a comic every day. I wake up and I'm deconstructing thoughts, and I'm seeing a live event happening in front of me, and I'm thinking, saying, oh, that was so interesting the way they placed it. You know, the way they phrased that sentence right now. You know, I'm constantly re-punching people's normal live punchlines in my head. You know, today I realize I am a stand-up comic. I don't need to perform 50 times a year in order to be calling myself a comic. I am a comic. I may be a good comic according to the audience, or bad comic, or I may be a successful comic or a not successful, but I'm a comic. That's about it. I think that realization is something that was pure and precious for me in the last 2 years.
And speaking of that, you're planning on taking a show called Mansplaining on tour. So can you tell us a bit about the show and what you got planned for the tour?
Mansplaining is the unraveling of my life that has happened in the last 3 years. You know, I've realized that without my work, am I even a man? You know, that entire question that unraveled for me, because I think the most important thing that got removed from me, and therefore a lot of people around me, was is our disconnect with making a living. This is what we do for a living. This is our sense of purpose. This is where we draw our self-respect and our self-esteem from. All those sources ran dry. And the absence of it, I was like, so what makes me a man? I don't know. And therefore the question of what is a man? What is, and at the same time, I think at that point of time when I was negotiating a partner entering into my life and which eventually became a marriage, I think to understand the lack of agency that a woman suffers in her life and the overabundance of energy that we have as men to say, you know what, am I a man? They realize they're a woman on a daily basis because of the things that they don't get because they're women. And as a man, I'm like, I have 10 things to define myself, and I'm like, what are these 10 things? What if? As if I think it's that unraveling today, where today I realize I don't want to be a man in the way man has been defined for me as a person in the last 40 years. I don't want to be that. If that's what entails being a man, I am not a man anymore. I am something else. I just want to be a being that mindfully enjoys every single experience that life offers, and to be at some level be able to tell an audience saying, dude, I am at the receiving end of magnificent privilege. I am giving it up. I mean, I'm not going to give it up, because even if I say I give it up, it's not going to be taken away from me. I mean, I'm going to enjoy this for the next one generation for sure. But to at least tell an audience out there saying, I see it. Do you see it? That's the show. And this is, it's something that I've been living for the last 2 years. And I think I'm at that stage in my life as an artist and as a comic that I want to put my reality on stage. And I want to make people laugh and identify with that sense of catharsis that I have gone through in my life. It would be cathartic for me to perform it. It would be entertaining and truthful for an audience to listen to it. Right? So I'm not at that stage in life where I have a bunch of faux premises and I want to make people laugh. Today I get high with a couple of my friends and I share those premises and they laugh, and that ends right there. I don't need to take it to a neutral audience that I don't even know of and make them laugh about it, because I feel that the laughter already exists for that. I just have to tweak it.
Yeah.
Right? Whereas if I can make you relate to me and laugh at something that you can relate to through me in your life, then I think comedy is at a, it just becomes so much. You can make meaning of your life through comedy. I'm making meaning of my life through my comedy. I just have to make sure that audiences relate to that as well. So Mansplaining is probably an important show in my life that I'm eager to share with audiences, and I hope to God they're happy to receive it.
Yeah. That part where you said women always have to are always faced with a lack of agency. But men are always, this reminds me of a phrase that sort of social historians and anthropologists use, which is masculinity is always in crisis.
It's always
history, crisis.
In crisis. Okay.
Any time in history you look at, any place you look at, there are always people concerned about how masculinity is under attack. This is a historical constant. So that you touched on that, and that is, I think, because I read a lot of amateur history and I read history books, and this is a constant. From the Greeks worrying about how men now are not real men to trads doing it now, this never goes away, no matter how powerful men are. It's an interesting sort of observation about masculinity itself.
And I feel that masculinity, as much as it's postured as being courageous and strong and solid, it's extremely fragile, and it's constantly fragile because we are this close to being replaced by Google and a good vibrator. That's it. That's it.
Yeah.
That's how fragile our existence is. And I think this posturing of toughness and macho-ness is all pomp and show. And that show we have to keep maintaining, because if any other gender realizes that truth, we are going to fall. they will all thrive and exist because they've always thrived and existed in all kinds of strife. We have never been through strife. We will not be able to handle even that. So, yeah, a Google and a good vibrator away from extinction.
And you'd said in a 2020 interview that you had a special that was due in 2021 for an OTT platform. So is this, I'm guessing COVID threw a spanner in those plans. Is this intended to be that special now? Is that what you?
Yeah, this is that special. Yeah, this is that special. I think I had the benefit of being able to write it therefore for far longer. It's a lot more reflective. It's a lot more meaningful. Every edit I've got, I'm probably at edit number 16 right now, which is not something that I would have done if I had already gone and tested it in front of an audience. So my writing chops are being tested a lot more, and I think I have the advantage of experience because I've been on stage 10,000 hours to know how this joke will work on stage, how my joke will work on stage, not anybody's joke. I know my rhythm and my meter, and therefore when I reach edit 16 before I try an audience, a live audience, I know for a fact that I am definitely saying something that I want to say. I just have to make it funny. Right? Because my earlier shows, I used to say a lot of things and I used to ramble on and see if that content works. And if it works, it actually works against me, especially because then I'll feel reluctant to remove from the set because it gets a laugh. Today, I'm not going to an audience unless I know what it is I want to say. My audience will only help me say it funnier or say it better. So, yeah, this is that special and Mansplaining. I did not have a special out last year. I hope to have the show out this year and fingers crossed, touring as much as possible.
Yeah. And you also had a directorial debut in the works.
I did, yeah.
Is it still happening? What's happening with that?
I realize as a director that I'm only in charge of directing the film and getting it made. I think releasing it is in the hands of God and maybe Dharma Productions, which is one step closer to God. So, but yeah, I've made a film. It's in the hands of my producers, Yoogli Pictures, Saregama, and they are. I think they've always been backing off very, very interesting, meaningful, entertaining stories of a certain quantum or size. I think that size is working against us right now because it's a very small, adorable film. And to be able to sell a small, adorable film without the names of big stars is a challenge, right? And therefore, I hope the film comes out this year. But I showed the film finally to my cast and crew last week, and I kind of got an emotional closure on it because they finally saw the film that I was making, and they were like, "This is such an adorable children's film. Everybody should watch it." I said, "Okay, so I'm done. I'm leaving it right now." So, yeah.
So, what sort of film is it? Is it like a comedy children's film?
It's a super feel-good, super I say because it's about superheroes. It's about 5 old people who lie to a child to impress the child and tell them that they're actually superheroes. And the child gets damn impressed. They lie, and then when something bad happens, the child looks to them and says, "You're going to save the world," and they have to live up to it. So it's about old people posturing themselves as superheroes. Okay. So it's a feel-good film. I think that's something that we don't have in the genre right now. Like in the 90s, there used to be movies like Home Alone, Kindergarten Cop, Christmas releases that happened in the US that also used to work out very well here. Children's films and feel-good, heartwarming comedies. So this is exactly that. I know for a fact that it will be adequately loved and appreciated. It won't. I don't know if it will impress the socks of anybody, but it's a debut directorial feature. So you will see it as a debut directorial feature. But I enjoyed being able to direct a film. Wow, it's just felt like, whoa! I've done this in my lifetime. So
any plans on more director?
I'm actually in the writing room right now, drafting my next film script. But that's again being written with a lot of hope because until a key couple of cast members pick up on that idea and say, I'll do it. You don't have a full.
Yeah.
So it's being written, and I'm very excited about the writing of it right now. But let me have fun writing it before I start worrying about saying, will this get made? Who would make it? So enjoy writing it.
Nice. So 2021 started with a comedian getting arrested for a joke he hadn't yet made, and ended with people threatening to set themselves on fire if a comedian did a show. What are your hopes for comedy in 2022?
You know, you mentioned earlier in the interview that the music industry went through a certain cycle, right? And we are 10 years later, comedy is going through the same cycle. I think this entire thing of comedians getting arrested and taking comedians damn seriously, I think this is also a phase that we'll go through. Like I was watching a documentary a few days back about this comedian called Lenny Bruce in the 50s and 60s in US, right? So they went through that, negotiating free speech. So today, I think a comedian saying something audacious seems offensive to my ear as a society, right? The political warlords are calling, calling the army on them. People are getting, we don't know how to react. There's chaos. 10 years on, I don't think this will happen because we would have gotten used to it. Our ears, whether it's the audience's ears or the political system's ears, I think they'll get used to this itself. Because comedians, even up to now, Bollywood comedy is in such a safe area. They never do anything that is questioning or thumbing nose to power. We're not doing that in the Bollywood space for 50 years. Bollywood has been so docile and subservient as far as comedy is concerned. Stand-up comedians today, in the last 10 years, suddenly have realized saying, I'll talk about the government, I'll talk about sexuality, I will talk about regression, I will talk about oppression, I will talk about caste. Society is like, dude, shut up. We have kept quiet about this for the longest time. So, yes, there will be arrests, there will be trolls, there will be shows that will get banned, all that will happen. But I think in 10 years, we'll be like, okay, fine, another offensive joke. I think we are learning as a society to start ignoring comics. God bless that tendency to ignore us, please. There are people loving our joke, there are people hating our joke. The hating ones will start ignoring us. I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah.
So I think today we are just this extremely new animal in the ecosystem that people need to react to. We should become so commonplace in the ecosystem that people start ignoring us. We're just that cow on the road.
Yeah. And like you gave the Lenny Bruce example, hopefully comedians will also figure out how to deal with this. Like doctors have malpractice insurance.
Yeah.
It will become a cost of doing business. That these are the risks that are just part of it, and you know how to deal with it. Right now, nobody knows how to deal with them.
Absolutely. We don't know how to deal with it. We feel outraged ourselves. We feel unsafe and scared. We suddenly start exaggerating, saying, "Oh, I will never be able to crack such a joke." We will be able to. Just give it some time. Yes, somebody will bear the brunt of all of this at some point in time. The first person who got trolled online is somebody. The first person who got arrested is somebody. The first person who went and got a bail or an anticipatory bail is. Everybody does firsts. We'll share protocols and SOPs on how this is done, right? So that we will share with each other. But we should not get surprised until somebody's life is under threat, right? Which also will happen, right? And it's only because I think we should just tell ourselves saying we are doing something really peculiar that hasn't happened. It will become less peculiar in 5 years' time.
Yeah.
Which is a good thing.
That's a good sort of thing to keep in mind when dealing with this, because in the moment it feels like the whole world's against you and everything's crashing down. But there is precedent. Lots of people have gone through this in different times and places.
Yeah. And I think it's also, it's also some form of exciting validation right now saying, dude, we matter, right? Which is not true actually. We matter because we are peculiar on the road right now, right? We are that exotic animal on the road. You're like, what's this exotic animal on the road? Day after tomorrow when you realize I have to negotiate through this there's another animal on the road. We are not going to get this validation in 5 years from now. We will actually miss it. There'll be some comedians who will be like, dude, I really want to offend people and nobody got offended. That validation we will not get 5 years from now. So you might as well enjoy the novelty of it right now. This will not last either.
Okay,
you hope to get arrested and you will arrest. Nobody will arrest you. They'll be like, get lost.
So on that very sort of looking at the silver lining note, that's the end of our episode. Thank you so much, Karthik. This has been a fantastic chat.
Pleasure. And a big shout out to DeadAnt and what you guys do, because you guys just keep this vibe going. And this vibe is really important. Like I say, Avam will come and go or DeadAnt will come and go. But whoever keeps this vibe alive is just so important, because you're reaching this frequency so that it can be resonated by another antenna. So God bless you for keeping the vibe alive. And
thank you, Karthik. It's been a pleasure having you on the show, and hope to see you live on stage.
Live on stage. That's the real thing. Live on stage.